Hello, everybody. Welcome back to yet again another video. My room is in a state of utter disrepair. I feel like I start a lot of videos like that. I got off work for the end of this year. This is the end of 2026. Christmas just happened. It's like the 30th. So we're approaching, it's the end of 2025. We're approaching the new year for 2026. It's real close. And coming out of work, going into Christmas, excuse me, I got sick. My mother and my partner, both within the span of like 48 hours, mentioned, hey, I've noticed that you are getting sick a lot. My partner was like, if you search sick in our messages, it's like once a month you're like getting sick. And I also have seen recently that a symptom of long COVID is getting sick more frequently. Like it suppresses your immune system. So I'm wondering if maybe it's just coincidence, maybe it's some of my habits or my diet or whatever. It could be a number of things or it's all of them. Because I've been on break and I've been sick, I'm talking like sinus and like coughing, like chest stuff, none of the fun stuff. That has been my reality. And now I am coughing much less. It's more of a dry cough. Now I am chilling. I'm doing a lot better. And I actually have enough energy to make things, to record videos, to talk to you guys, because I just have not had that energy. So my room is in a state of disrepair. You can't see it, but there are many things just piled in the space that you cannot see. I didn't do that intentionally. It's just I happen to spend a lot of time at my desk, and this is the place where I'll put things while I'm here. Christmas with my family was good. It was kind of funny when everybody was leaving. We all kind of giving each other high fives and hugs and yeah, we made it a whole day in this house together. Let's go. There are only a few moments that were a little bit uncomfortable. I'm glad I can do that with my family. Not everybody gets that chance. Today, speaking of Christmas, it's been an interest of mine for a while now. I think an interest may be overstating it. I've wondered about, for a while now, pagan traditions. And what I mean by this is older traditions that were nested in cultures that have since been replaced with more Christian practices or, more modern practices or forgotten altogether. Now I grew up in the church and I live in America. And you put those two things together, and although I was in a more progressive, Protestant church growing up, I just witness a lot of Christianism, and everything. It is just very deeply rooted in Americans' culture ever since really the beginning. I also have a mother who is adopted, and we don't know a whole lot about her parents or her ancestry. So in that case, I also don't really have a lot of connection to half of my family's lineage. On my dad's side, we have reason to believe, because of some old papers and things, that we come from northwestern Europe, Norwegian, Dutch. We also have a lot of my mom did an ancestry thing, and we have a whole lot of different places of origin in Europe. I'm also a little bit Jewish. There's a lot of things that is within my ancestry. However, in both of these cases, with my mother and my father, there is really no connection or practice to the cultures we come from. Now, I think that's okay. It is maybe a little unfortunate because I feel like I'm maybe missing out on some of the richness that comes from being a person with a close connection to their heritage. I think that's important, and that's a part of our human experience that is to be celebrated. And it's just made me curious about the important pagan rituals, the traditions that the cultures that I come from, and also cultures in general, used to practice prior to Christian becoming more of a nationalized thing. I'm not talking America, even before then, in Europe. Something that's true is that Christmas, as an excellent example, maybe the best example, is a holiday that pulled from many different pagan traditions and even the timing, and then made it into a Christian holiday. There's a lot of symbolism, even like a lot of inspiration for Santa and the Christmas tree and like a Yule log, and even the timing in the year being around the winter solstice. Many pagan traditions happened during the winter solstice as a time to just like be together in the cold and prepare for the days to get longer, for warmth to happen, and to like go out and do life again. If you don't know, the winter solstice is the day of the year that is the shortest of sunlight. From sunrise to sundown, it is the shortest amount of time in the year. That was December 21st of this year, so right before Christmas. By choosing a time to celebrate Christ's birth that was around the same time as many different unique, like we're talking villages had their own traditions. We're talking very diverse ways of doing this that were similar. This was a way to like introduce a different practice, a different tradition that was Christ-centric, that would be easy for pagans to transition into out of their previous practices. And unfortunately, there's a lot of cultural significance that is lost in that. This is a topic that honestly, I feel somewhat heartbroken about. This topic for me is a little bit hard to like speak really eloquently about because it has become an increasingly emotional topic for me to talk about. The more I've learned, especially being in organizing, which really looks at history of America, especially for me, so much of American history and European history and world history altogether is cultures that have depth and significance to people that are long-standing being erased, being lost, being replaced by more powerful people who perceive the culture they're replacing as less than or as uncivilized. I have the privilege of living a life as somebody who can benefit from the system I'm in. I'm a white cis male who grew up in a Christian faith, in America. And as someone who has really essentially left that institution and no longer practices that, I'm left with a lot of curiosity, how other people, how other places do things. And I also recognize that I am absolutely not entitled to that knowledge or practice. There's a little bit of complicated FOMO that I get that feels contradictory to like the moral standing of my situation, because I want to participate in the enrichment that comes from being tied to your heritage and having some kind of significant cultural tradition, while also understanding that I am absolutely not entitled to that. There is enrichment I can gain from practicing Christmas with my family because that's where I come from. And I also understand that my true heritage from those villages in Europe, they had practices surrounding the winter solstice. That is something that I wish was a part of my experience, growing up and with my family. So all of this has added up to wondering what it would look like to understand more pagan traditions surrounding the winter solstice in celebrating Christmas, incorporating some of the meaning and traditions tied to my heritage that is surrounding the winter solstice. Essentially, celebrating a pagan Christmas. I want to be clear that this isn't necessarily me making an ethical argument. I honestly don't know what the pure ethical thing is to do here. All I'm sharing is what I think about this, what I feel about this. And there's a lot of people who know more, who have gone down this road, who have similar experience to me, that will have a much more eloquent answer than I do. And I think this is becoming something that people are increasingly realizing. I've talked with friends who really like the idea of, like going out and doing some like pagan tradition things surrounding the winter solstice. Like we've had those conversations in passing and thought of how cool it would be. And I also don't want to, partake in somebody's culture in a way that is cheapening what it means. I also have some hesitation in just like looking something up on Google and going and doing it. And I guess these things got to start somewhere. But I also want to do my due diligence and like making sure we're preserving some of the meaning, around what it means, around why we're doing it. I would want it to be intentional and not just like we look some things up on Google and go out and do it. And I realized during my Christmas practice with my family that this next year I could be the one that is organizing that with my friends. I want help on this, of course, but I could do the research. I could plan it out for the winter solstice. It could be simple, but it could also be steeped in meaning and some history. I could task other friends with the task of learning what their culture, used to practice in their ancestry or in their heritage, what their culture used to practice around the winter solstice. And we could come together and like share some of our heritage and do our very best to partake in this like seemingly timeless human practice where we get together and we do something that feels meaningful. That's something I love about humanity, is that humans, just what humans do is get together and do something that feels meaningful. And that is just so cool to me that humans just do that. So I like the idea of a pagan Christmas. That's an oxymoron in a lot of ways because Christmas, of course, has Christ in it. Christmas is observing the birth of Jesus Christ. However, what would it look like to more authentically look at where we come from and how they practice it? A few examples of these traditions, which I know very little about, is like burying a piece of bread as an offering for like, a good year of growth and stuff like that. And like having a Yule log, like a log that you burn, which I don't fully understand. Like there's a lot of these sort of traditions that I don't know, that I want to know and I want to understand and I want to feel some sort of connection to them when talking about my own roots. It is true that I come from a devastating, tragic lineage of oppression and genocide and privilege. And it's true that before then, I came from people in villages with jobs that came together around a Yule log, probably, or something similar around the winter solstice for the sake of making memories, recharging for the year, sharing a meal, probably singing songs. I feel that learning about it and maybe partaking is a way to honor that and recognize what they did so long ago that allowed me to be here today. I'm not trying to rewrite European history. The heritage that I come from is responsible for ruthless genocide and oppression and torture. And I think it's important for all of us who are of European descent to recognize that, to observe that, to grieve that while we are also observing these holidays that are important to our older heritage. And for those of you who are people who are not of European descent, who are connected to your cultures, I don't one bit expect you guys to want to share your experience connecting with your heritage or help people from European descent to discover theirs, because it's not your job and I don't blame you. As you can tell, I'm still working this out in my own head. And I hope next year I have much more of a handle on how I feel about this and what I've learned. And in the meantime, if you feel that you have some helpful insight, whether you are somebody who is not a cis white male who has more knowledge around what it means to be connected to your heritage, or if you're somebody who is more like me in that way and who has gone through this process, like I'd love to hear about what you think, honestly. And hopefully we can move in the right direction. This is the last video for 2025. And honestly, that is also my hope for 2026, is that we just move in the right direction. If we can just change course a little bit, guys. I wish you happy holidays, whatever you may be celebrating, and a happy new year. And let's hope for a better 2026. We're in this together, everybody.